Hello, I'm Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be talking about the Dragonbound Dragoncaller machine that has returned once again to North America. So, Dragonbound Dragoncaller, or DBDC, is quite an old event that does still cost 10 magic stones, and upon its original debut, it featured cards that were tremendously powerful and somewhat irreplaceable, and it made it so players wanted to roll heavily, and that's what I did as well as many others. Now, over time, things tend to get relatively weaker. They're not actually weaker compared to other options, they're just not as strong compared to what else could be available. And that is the case of what happened to Dragonbound Dragoncaller, mostly because the cards that are featured here are highly specialized, and even to this day, many of them still do not even have 9 awakenings. And that just feels a little insulting because essentially everything is 9 awakenings, and the fact that you're playing around with less just hinders and handicaps how much you can do. Now, one other thing I want to highlight with the Dragonbound Dragoncaller is that this is a gung-ho exclusive machine, and that means it will return on a regular basis. There should be periodic buffs and new cards released as well. So, in all honesty, there is no real rush to roll in this event. If you are starting to see, like, if you don't have these cards and you're thinking maybe I could benefit from them, maybe you could just wait if you don't think you're going to actually be able to use them right now, because in several months this machine should return, and hopefully it becomes significantly buffed or stronger and becomes a more opportune time to roll, so to speak. And what has held this event back, at least at this point in time, is that most of the cards don't have 9 awakenings, and even the 7-star cards, many of them are still lacking awakenings. They got voice awakenings, which may or may not have been compensated by other awakenings. Like, it's just, you feel like the cards are incomplete, and it doesn't feel like they're as rewarding, so to speak. If they had given weapon assist to everything, then many more cards would be significantly more valuable. But at the bottom rarity, for the most part, there are many strong killer options. Out of here, there are 5 out of the 7 bottom rarity cards are strong triple killers or double killers or something that has lots of killers, and that provides value for ranking dungeons or farming. But at this point in time, I feel like only Valeria is truly king, but either way, I'm still going to talk about each of the cards individually. So, base Rehven is a wonderful farming powerhouse card. They have 16 times personal damage when below 50% health, unconditional to any match, explosive amounts of damage. And they can technically have 4 skill boosts, which is nice. And as a leader, they can hit 576 times attack, which is truly outrageous. And all you have to do is be below half health, which should always be doable, and then gain bonus combos and hitting 3 or more colors. So you're going to be matching red. I'm just going to make that presumption. And then you match 2 other colors. Shouldn't be that hard, and you have this outrageous amount of damage output. And this is valuable in content that is very predictable. Generally speaking, these types of leaders are built for farming purposes, like such as, say, Training Arena 2, where there's grossly inflated stats on the boss's end, but very few mechanics. So it's a matter of just hitting hard and progressing through the dungeon. And basically the idea is you want to be able to try and build and plan your team around that accordingly. Now, it is much easier to keep your health at lower thresholds because his active skill can reduce your health, but you have access to things like Zerog Core, at least at the very least, so there are ways to do so. Now, the main drawbacks of this card is that, well, if you use dual leaders, the active skill, while powerful, does become a little redundant. A 2-turn Fujin is helpful for things like Alt Arena 3, Arena 5, where there is the 25% chance of back-to-back absorption spawns, but again, how valuable that is will depend on how much you play those types of content. And if you do use them as an inherit, unfortunately you don't get any awakenings, which again just feel a little lacking, and you may not always be able to use Rehven as a sub for those types of content. But again, what I want to stress is that for things like Training Arena 2, where there's no mechanics and just you need to hit very hard, Rehven is kind of king because you can hit 144 times with just 1 combo and then 576 with 3 colors. Not the hardest thing in the world to do. By comparison, their evolved form trades out those attack while below 50% for copious amounts of TPA. So they can achieve large amounts of TPA damage, but again, the main issue is with TPA, and this is going to hold true for the rest of the article, is that there are not many great ways to take advantage of TPA, mostly because the damage output is lower compared to other ones. It's only 1.5 times, and that means they have to have many of them to truly be efficient. But then if you have so many of your awakenings tied to just TPA, you don't bring much else to the table. You have possibly more TPA or just 2 skill boosts. You have no skill bind resist. You don't have much time extend possibly. Like, there's not much he's going to be bringing to the table, and that's difficult because at this point in time, most teams, at least a large chunk of teams nowadays, are monocolor, and they tend to activate off of blobs, like say 6 or more connected dark orbs. And Rehven won't fit because in order to activate for the full team, you need 6, which means that's not a TPA. So you need 10 for a TPA plus your connect 6. You can make a VDP in that, and it's probably going to do more anyways. So the point is, it's hard to really find a good usage for Rehven's evolve form, and I would stick to their base form for that just relatively unconditional damage when below 50% health. Next is Highren, and Highren again continues the theme of lots of the same awakening and not much diversity. They have numerous amounts of fire rose, and they have the 100% jammer resistance. So that could be useful, but again, where can you really utilize this kind of card? Their active skill is not also an orb generator. It's a very defensive oriented active, and if you're farming content, you want orb changers to just match, and go. And Highren is not going to be able to do that in their base form. And with that in mind, I would be more inclined to look at their evolve form because it's featuring something that is unprecedented still. So their active skill is full health heal, recover all awoken binds, 1 turn damage reduction of 100%. It's an emergency panic button. That's all it really is. It's not going to help you kill the spawn, it's just going to help you not die for 1 turn. Whether or not that saves you is dependent on the spawn you're fighting, how much value that will bring. I feel like it's usually better to kill things than try and defensively avoid it. And for most games, actually, like, the best defense is offense. Kill it before it kills you. But either way, a nice panic button. The main appeal of Highren is that they have 4 VDP awakenings, and that results in 39 times personal damage. 4 VDP is something also Yugi has, but that's a transformational card, so it's a little unfair to compare the two. But with 4 VDP, they will deal spectacular amounts of damage. But the main issue is you're only good if you match VDP. Any other combo, Highren does not produce damage. And at least for myself and how I like to play the game, I usually have a mix of like offensive and more utility-based cards on the team. And for my offensive options, I want them to have damage at all times. And that usually comes in the case of, say, 777 combo, because most teams can synergize with 7 combos. So a 777 combo, you have 8 times damage against any spawn, should be enough for most things that are not bosses. And then they usually have 1 VDP in order to bring themselves up to 20 times damage with 7 combos and the VDP. Obviously that is lower than 39 times with 4 VDP, but you have damage against every single spawn on every single floor, and that just makes your life much easier. Now, with that being said, if you're using Highren on something such as Beach Varroa, it's not as terrible because Beach Varroa needs to match 9 connected water orbs to activate anyways, so you're going through that motion already, and then Highren is going to deal massive damage. But you have to remember, they don't have much in the way of other awakenings. They are primarily just a VDP damage stick, and it can be a little harder to build teams around a lot of Dragonbound Dragoncaller cards. Next is Ideal. And Ideal used to be the ideal card in this event because at the time of her release, there were very few 777 combo cards. She still has large weighted stats, and they were large back then. And she also provides team health. And for the most part, this was all we needed back then because VDP did not really exist. There were a couple of void spawns, but nothing you couldn't really deal with otherwise. Things like Altarina 1, if I'm not mistaken, like it wasn't terrible not having VDP, like you still could go through it if I'm not mistaken. But in this day and age, we need VDP because any hard spawn has a void. And this is going to kind of be like Highren's problem, but the opposite. Ideal can do damage against every spawn that's not important. But the important spawns that have the void, Ideal won't be dealing any damage. So your damage dealing card who's not bringing much in the way of utility otherwise is not contributing. So it's just going to be much harder to justify using Ideal as a sub at this point in time. Yes, her active skill did get buffed. It does provide you with 1 turn of canceling attribute absorption, but again, relatively niche. It's still a reasonably long cooldown for something that's not going to necessarily pay off that well. It's a diluted rainbow board. Monocolor teams won't benefit from it. Rainbow teams, I feel, are just a better options overall, but Ideal is still animated and still pretty to look at. Finally, her leader skill did get improved. It would be a nice transitional leader if you like rainbows, because you have copious amounts of movement time, you have some damage reduction, and you have a relatively high attack multiplier. But if you're looking for a nice, easy transitional leader for early game, if you were fortunate enough to roll Ideal, Dark Ideal is a great candidate. You have copious amounts of movement time, you have some health multiplier, you also have potentially 400 times attack, but it's hard hitting 12 or more combos because a given board on 6x5 is only 10, so it's not going to be quite as practical. But the point of the matter is, it's a nice introduction leader. It will get you going, it will clear a good amount of content, but over time you'll possibly want to convert her to her light form if you're looking for a sub without VDP. Again, Ideal is just not where she used to be. It's just awkward if you don't have VDP. If Ideal got VDP, it should become much easier to use, but sadly that is not the case. Get rid of that voice awakening, make that literally anything else, and you could be cool. Next is Lajoa. So Lajoa shares the same active skill across both forms, and it's quite powerful. It gives you a full board of dark and heal, so easy to VDP and super vault attack, easy just flood the board for damage, useful board changer overall. You recover 40% of your maximum health. It's okay, not bad. And then reduce bind and awoken binds by 4 turns. So he's wrapping in several different components into their active skill, and it can solve quite a few problems for mono dark teams. In regards to the leader skill in their base form, they need to be above 80% health. They need to connect 30 or more dark orbs. It's just horribly inconsistent overall. It's just not going to happen. You need 21 dark orbs for your massive 900 times. There are easier to access farming leaders, and if you're looking for a sub, you want to use Lajoa as a Vol form, because instead of that follow-up attack, which should be common anyways, you get to have a VDP. So at least they contribute some damage against those spawns. It's not going to be that large, but hey, it's additional damage. They can have 4 skill boosts. They are devil typing, which means they can be a transformational sub for Yugi, who does need devils. It can be a good solution for bind and awoken bind clear, a nice board changer, a big heal if you have like 200,000 health. That's an 80,000 instantaneous heal. A useful sub all around. Is it going to be the best possible sub? Maybe for your given box, but it is just another option to have. I own Lajoa and I've barely used him. I've had him for quite a while and I just really haven't found a usage for them at this point in time, I feel. Next is Suou. So Suou in their base form is 4 7 combos. So we're kind of like taking Ideal's problem but making it more extreme. He has 16 times personal damage against any spawn. Truly magical. But you do nothing against void spawns, and that's just unfortunate. Like, you're just not providing value in that regards. You're basically a gigantic damage stick. You could get cloud resist, you have a bit of time extend. Like, it's not terrible, but I feel like if I'm going to be using an offensive card, I want them to actually deal damage against everything. And in all honesty, 4/7 combos is kind of overkill when you really think about it. Most things are dying already when you have 7/7 combo cards, so I feel like having the 4th and not the VDP is just hindering their overall viability. But again, if you're playing through content where you just need to hit super hard, don't care about mechanics, Suou can definitely roll there. In terms of their active skill, for both forms, they remove locked statuses. They give a tricolor of fire, water, and hearts, and then +1 combo count. Reasonably useful active. And if you are going to pursue their evolve form, I feel like are a bit more future-proofed and a better long-term like they probably have more viability because they have 3 VDP, so large VDP damage. They have 4 skill boosts, so we might need them at some point. Maybe there will be a fire transformational leader at some point. Suou could be a reasonable option over there. 4 skill boosts, big VDP damage. It might be what you need. Again, the problem is when you have so many VDPs, you're kind of like Highren's problem where you only deal damage when matching many connected orbs, like 9 connected orbs. It's not reliable or consistent, and I prefer having damage dealing cards deal damage every turn. Next is Roche, and in her base form, she has huge amounts of attack, which has synergy with her many TPA. So she is a much stronger TPA option than Rehven, but again, follows the same hindrances or drawbacks as other TPA cards. You're basically, all your awakenings are dedicated just for TPA. You don't counter voids. You may not synergize with blob monocolor teams. It could be a little hard to work her in, but amusingly enough, if you utilize her TPAs for Super Awakenings, Zero Core's Weapon Assist, you can have a stupendously high amount of TPA damage. Like one combo could kill stuff, provided your leader skill actually has synergy. And at this point in time, I feel like she has value on Vega and Rye teams, assuming you can work around her small 2 skill boosts. Because Vega and Rye needs dragons, so she covers that. She fills that dragon role. She has 2 colors that may be difficult to achieve on your team, possibly. But the point is, Vega and Rye does 400 times attack once transformed. No condition. So 1 wood TPA will kill things, and her lack of a VDP is overcome by Vega and Rye's active skill, which voids damage void, so she can just 1 TPA and bam, things will die. Something to consider. Very powerful damage dealing option in those under the right circumstances, but it can be hard to find those right circumstances. For her evolved form, they retain the same active skill of ignoring attribute absorb effects, which has situational value, but they changed fire and jammers to wood and water and poison to dark. So a double orb changer may not make the colors you want, but at least you get rid of hazards. Their awakenings are slightly different. They have potentially 4 attack while below 50%. So again, kind of like Rehven, massive 16 times personal damage, but again, no void. They do bring 2 skill boosts. They bring follow-up attack. They bring a finger. Like, it's an okay card overall, but again, if you're playing through content that has voids, she will not be contributing anything to that case overall. And one thing I want to mention is that with this setup here, you might think this is a good damage dealing solution, but she is dark, and I feel that Zero Core, who possibly 50% of the players have because he was given out for free, already owns. And Zero Core also has 4 offensive awakenings, 2/7, 2 attack while below 50. But he also has a VDP through Super Awakenings. So he can fulfill that damage role with a valuable active skill for any low health team. And I just feel like Roche gets pushed out because Zero Core also has follow-up attack. Like, it's just like you're being replaced by something that many people already have, and you're not even doing it as well. So it can be a little problematic. But again, if you're playing through stuff where voids are not an issue and you just want to make like 1 combos, Roche definitely fulfills that ability because 16 times for 1 combo when below half health is hard to really compete against. In regards to their leader skill, it does look strong on paper because of the large amount of damage reduction with dual leaders, but you have to hit 8 or more combos. And the problem is, 8 combos is not always doable on 6x5. If you fail to hit 8 because your board was just unfavorable, you have no effective health. You'll probably just die. That's not good. If you utilize 7x6 leaders, like say Diablos, because that's just the first one that came to my mind, it does alleviate that, but then you lose a lot of your multipliers. Maybe leader swapping could be a thing, but again, it's a lot of effort to go through when both your leaders still don't solve the void problems. Now we come to Valeria, and Valeria in her base form is the real star of this event at this point in time. She has not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, but 7 skill boosts. She's just head and shoulders above other options. Before this current rerun, it was 6, and Weld is farmable, provided 5. At least is a little closer, but with 2 additional skill boosts, you can open up so many different team building possibilities. You can incorporate different inherits, different subs. It just frees up space when you have that many skill boosts. And these are true skill boosts, not effective skill boosts. So there's no delay, there's no haste, there's no extra animation time. You have them right away. So for things like ranking dungeons, true skill boosts are more efficient than effective skill boosts because it's all about the time. Furthermore, Valeria also has great weighted stats. She has nice bulk, don't really care about her attack, and good RCV. So like, she's obviously head and shoulders above any other skill boost option. So why are these skill boosts so important? So first things first, transformational cards. Transformational cards just need to hit a certain number of skill boosts to transform, and then they're super powerful. That's kind of an obvious case. But in addition to that, they have value in ranking dungeons, like I mentioned, because certain compositions want to have enough skill boosts to have certain actives come up in time. But it's also good for farming as well. But another thing is rank experience farming. Now, this is not something that's practical or really applicable for the average player. I feel like only when you're in your like rank 900 plus, it really becomes an issue because you can't chain rank ups as easily. So the idea is it's almost like you're playing a transformational team, except you're utilizing leader swapping with co-op. So what you do is you enter co-op with 2 Salines, and you will have leader swaps on both teams. And you enter with double Salines, so that means when you finish the dungeon, you have 2.88 or something along those lines bonus rank experience for finishing the dungeon. Doesn't matter what you entered with, as long as you enter with Salines, it doesn't matter what you swap into, you still get that bonus rank experience. So you can have arena clears which are giving you like 18 million experience, something tremendously high, especially during events where they have bonus experience as well. Like, it's a way for people at super high ranks to rank up on a more regular basis. It's not applicable for the average player. It requires co-op basically, and again, it can be a little excessive, but the point of the matter is she has 7 skill boosts. Nothing competes against that. In terms of their evolve form, it could be it's an okay rainbow leader, but you're giving up 7 skill boosts. Like, there's nothing better than that at this point in time. There's no stronger option for pure skill boosts. Like, if you are the best at something that's relevant, it's hard to justify making the other form, because while the multipliers look big, faces the same problems as other rainbow teams. Your effective health is kind of low despite team health. It's just not where we want it to be. Now we come to the 6-star cards. So the 6-star cards are going to exemplify the fact that they're missing awakenings more painfully than the 7-star cards because of the lower rarity. So the first is Mira, and she has huge amounts of RCV, but comically low amounts of health. She has only 7 awakenings, and 2 L's are not that helpful. A bit of enhanced healing is nice, but I feel like Air just does what you want better. She's farmable. She has large healing. She has a very powerful active skill. I feel like Mira's just not accomplishing that much overall. Furthermore, there are not many places to really utilize her because, again, Air will definitely push her out. Less awakenings. Another thing that some people might like is the 7x6 board, so you can enter and then swap, kind of a similar idea like saline swapping, but you enter a 7x6 and swap something. But she only has 1 skill boost, so it's going to be hard to charge it up. Something like Diao Chan has 4 skill boosts and a 7x6 board, as well as being a much better card all around. Tends to be a more preferred 7x6 swapper, but it gives you some options for different colors. Overall, I feel like Mira, despite being a relatively newer card in this event, is just underwhelming. Next is Weld, and Weld is all about his weapon assist. Let's just ignore the fact that there's a base form because all the focus is here. So the weapon assist actually was significantly improved. They give you a bit of offensive damage through a 1 enhanced orb, a TPA, fire resistance, and 2 poisons, along with an actually useful active skill for mono water and mono fire teams. So as we progress through the game, we often acquire better and better weapon assists and or options for resists, because resisting like poisons, blind, cloud, etc. becomes quite important in higher end content, and usually having sufficient resist is the first step you make for building a team. And once you have that, that's when you sprinkle in passive damage. So as you have stronger and stronger options, like let's use Diao Chan as an example. She has super blind. Now you don't have to worry about blind resist whatsoever. You might have space for some offensive awakenings. And Weld's weapon assist is kind of doing that a bit. You get 40% poison resist, which is not bad. You have an active skill you probably want, and you have a little bit of passive damage. It's not the most passive damage. It's not the most amazing weapon assist. It's all right. One other thing I want to point out is that this fire resist awakening has some value for Kiri teams if you like to cheese things, but again, that's not as powerful as it used to be, and I'll talk more about Kiri cheesing when I get to her section. Next is Nees. So like Mira, she only has very few awakenings, but to compensate, she has large weighted stats. So large weighted stats were quite interesting back in the day when this event first came out, because most things didn't even come close to that amount of weighted stats. And Nees provides you with such a gargantuan amount of health. But the problem is, as new cards get released, we start seeing things with similar amounts of weighted stats. Like, I'm pretty sure like the 7-star cards in the Yu-Gi-Oh collab. Like I think Kaiba has somewhat similar amounts of weighted stats or higher maybe. I can't remember exactly, but the point is we're going to get cards with higher weighted stats over time. It's just going to happen. And Nees is no longer special in that regards. And then you only have very few awakenings. It's just problematic. And it's just unfortunate because Nees, I feel like, could have been quite a strong character if she had a few more awakenings. Because her active skill is actually reasonable. 50% max health heal, Awoken Bind recovery for 5 turns, change fire to dark, water to wood. Not a bad active skill. At least you preserve hard orbs, but unfortunately, it's much harder to justify running her as a sub, even though she has so much health. She's just not going to be providing enough overall. Next is Tardis. And Tardis used to be the best one-turn active skill card in the game. But thankfully, many more options have been released, and Tardis has just gone periodically down and down. I mentioned how TPA is a little awkward, and Tardis does not have enough TPA to make use of his weak attack stat. It's just not going to happen. So Tardis would be more so a budget option, or an option if you lack other things, because right now Halloween Mine is farmable and infinitely more useful. We have Lutina, which is hard to acquire, and Zeracore, which many players also acquired for free. So there are much stronger options. Like the TPAs and Team RCV are just not providing much overall. It's just unfortunate because Tardis used to be great, but one thing I do want to mention is that with one-turn active skill cards, you can in theory inherit a Kuroyuri and create a Kuroyuri healing loop because the chain is not broken if the owning card, the base card, has a one-turn cooldown. So that's why some people do like Kuroyuri and then Halloween Mine, and then the Halloween Mine is Kuroyuri, and that way you're able to actually have 2 different resists. But point is, Tardis is just not as good. Next is Lee. So Lee is a leader swapping card. So as I mentioned, that saline swapping strategy would need something like Lee. But the problem is, despite the fact that Lee is still relatively unique, there are not that many leader swapping actives available. She's the worst at it. She has a long cooldown. She doesn't have a weapon assist. So there's no awakenings transfer over when you inherit, which is all she's going to be done. So it's just awkward. If she got a weapon assist, she could have been great, I feel. But you're just currently the worst leader swapping card available at this point in time. That's a little unfortunate. Next is Enra. And Enra suffers the ideal problem of, I have great personal damage, but no VDP. And in fact, Enra's personal damage is quite high despite having a low attack stat. You have 777 combos, you have attack well above 80%, so now you gained another 1.5 times. You have 12 times personal damage. If we add in the other through Super Waking, that's 18 times personal damage. Large amounts of personal damage when above 80% health, but no solution to voids. It's just not going to be that great. Their active skill is going to overflood your board with fire orbs, which is nice for monocolored teams, but you may not be able to make your combos. And again, a damage dealer that does not counter void spawns, which are the hardest spawns usually, is not a good damage dealer, unfortunately. Next is Distel, and despite the fact that Distel has 4 skill boosts, I don't really foresee them being used that much on transformational teams because their active skill is a 20-turn cooldown. It's not something you can access very easily. Yes, it's a big shield and it's a small burst, but we don't really need those things. For the most part, you should have enough effective health to tank hits in the game. And if, we are kind of past that era of utilizing active skills for shields to tank preemptives. We just tank them naturally now because instead of wasting an active skill slot, we just progress to the floor and we survive. So I feel like Distel's big shield is really lost a lot of its value compared to before. And for myself, I own Distel. I think I used it 2 years ago or something for a really niche specific Riku team where there was a no awakening challenge dungeon. It was such a niche thing to utilize it. I don't feel like I would ever use it again at this point in time, even if there's a water transformational card, because it's so hard to work around that excessively long cooldown. Next is Alpha. And Alpha should have been called Epsilon Delta, because I give them a D rank, because they're just kind of useless. They give you a tricolor board of +1 combo, but you're paying 4 more turns of cooldown for what should have been a Verdandi style board changer. Hard to work around. You don't want to use them as a sub. You have 6 L's. It's You're like a loser. It's terrible. Like there's too many L's. It doesn't do enough. People don't match L's. Having one L on a team is valuable, don't get me wrong, but having 6 on your single card and them not providing anything else whatsoever makes them just truly terrible. There's no place to utilize Alpha at this point in time, I feel, that could actually make them relevant. On the flip side, Omega is much more useful because Omega's active skill is a gemstone princess that scales off 7 combos. So the way it works is you look at the number of 7 combos across your entire team, and then the formula is 1 plus 0.3x, where x equals the number of 7 combos. So if you had 8 7 combos on your team, that would result in 3.4 times attack. Obviously, 8 7 combos is probably on the lower end. You probably could have much higher amounts. And the point of the matter is, Omega could be your best burst solution possible depending on your given team because you have many 7 combos. Again, it's just nice having these options whether or not you need the burst. But thankfully for us, Gung Ho was a little extra nice because they gave them triple co-op boost, which means they have 3.375 times stats in co-op. Now, their stats are reasonable. Unfortunately, their attack is quite low and possibly too much RCV, but at the same time, they could be kind of like a healing solution in co-op. They also can act as a button base, assuming their attack can reach high enough values, because the idea is with a button base, cards with high attack or inflated attack through co-op boosts inherit something that deals damage based on the card's attack. Hopefully that attack value is not high enough. You can press the button, kill the floor, or advance to the next floor. That's kind of the idea of a button base, and Omega can function as that in co-op as well. Lastly, for the 6 stars is Lieto, who is a utter disappointment. Their active skill, I guess, is kind of unique. It can change fire and hazards to dark, a little bit of bind recovery, remove locked orbs. You do a bit of everything, but nothing really great. And then we look at their awakenings. We have 5 team RCV. It's terrible. Like, enhanced heal orbs are just much more efficient overall. You don't need as many. So again, we're using a sub with an okay active that has no real awakenings in the sense that, like, yes, I could heal a bit more, but it's not going to be that much more like to justify utilizing Lieto as a sub. Air is farmable and is dark. It's just, air is just so much better as well. And I feel like Lieto, despite being a 6-star card, has no value at this point in time. Next is Rathios, and all their appeal, like Weld, is their weapon assist. So their weapon assist has 2 fire and 2 light rows, along with this Awoken Material Killer. So that Awoken Material Killer might have niche usages for certain things, but the only place I see this card being utilized is ranking dungeons, where the 2 different row colors helps with style points, because for the most part, no team is going to utilize both colors at the same time. It's just not going to happen. So unless there's a leader that can use light and fire and somehow solves their orb-hungry nature of this leader skill, maybe it could work. But until then, I feel like it's just a possible incredibly niche usage for maybe ranking dungeons where you want to layer in some rows for style points. That Awakening Killer might be helpful as well. Next is number 6. And I own probably more than 6 number 6s, but their active skill produces 7 fire orbs. I don't know. I feel like Gung Ho missed the ball in that. They could have called them number 7. I don't know. Either way, number 6 is going to start us off for the 5-star cards that have triple killers. And basically what I'm going to say is going to apply to essentially all the other ones. They are as useful for things like ranking dungeons and farming builds because they have 27 times damage against those respective spawns. It's incredibly powerful, and it's a great solution. And how much value those cards will bring to your given team depends on what other options you have. When Dragonbound Dragoncaller was first released, number 6 was pretty unique. There were very few other options for him to compete against. But over time, more and more have become available, which, in all honesty, is a good thing. Options are nice. So while number 6 may not be the best option to have possible, it might sometimes be your go-to choice because the spawn in question is wood, let's say, and fire is obviously effective against it. Furthermore, their active skill is reasonably short cooldown, which means you can inherit something over top of it. If playing through ranking dungeons, that L Awakening means style points, and that's kind of where I'm looking at these cards. It's going to be for like ranking dungeons or farming builds. Thankfully, number 6 has a special evolution through Altura. So Altura's active gives you an RCV buff for 4 turns, and enhances fire orbs, reduce unable to match orb effects by 5 turns. So, unable to match orb effects is still a relatively neat, seldom seen mechanic, but it's starting to become, I feel, a bit more common. And at the same time, Gung Ho has also released more cards with a direct counter through their active skill. If you don't have any of these active skills in your box whatsoever, Altura is going to be great because it'll be the first one you have. And the RCB buff is actually not a bad thing because in content such as Colosseum 2, there are many RCB debuffs. And if you get back-to-back spawns of RCB debuffs, you're probably dead because instead of RCB being debuff again, they just hit you again for tremendous damage. So you need to overwrite that RCB debuff, and having the unable to match orb effect at the same time could be useful because again, you may not always need the RCB overwriter. You want to have other useful secondary effects. But the problem is, you don't want to use Altura as a sub all the time, and inheriting them means you don't get Awakenings. So it's just kind of like, if they had Weapon Assist, Dragonbound Dragoncaller could be so much better because several of these actives are pretty useful overall, I feel. For Altura, it's kind of like a bit more combo-y oriented if you want to have damage. But again, it's not the best sub possible. Next is Kiri, who has triple dragon, a single physical, and they can take physical killer latents. So Kiri can obviously delete dragons. If they're physical, give some damage. If they're physical dragons, woof, they're gone. Again, how much value Kiri brings depends on how many other dragon killing options you have. But in terms of drawbacks, her active skill is incredibly long cooldown, so it's never going to really charge up for most things, especially in solo play. If you're playing through ranking dungeons, it's not going to charge up in time, so you're just inheriting something for passive damage on her. She only has 1 skill boost, but she does have a very unique active skill. So their active skill does peanuts amount of damage, but they reduce damage taken by fire attribute monsters by 75%. Stacks with 2 leaders, and you basically can create a special cheesing team because her active skill changes the enemy's attribute to fire, which means you now greatly resist that damage. So, a couple of years ago, cheesing was quite a viable strategy because we didn't encounter spawns that regularly changed their attribute. Nowadays, we have spawns that change their attribute all the time because they wanted to cut down on cheesing. Because the idea was you change the enemy's color to fire, and then you gravity them down to death, recharge active skills in the next turn, repeat, so on and so forth. That's how it worked. Is it fun? Maybe. It is interesting to say the least. It can clear some content, but I feel like Gung Ho is now releasing stuff that is not as cheesable as it used to be, so Kiri has definitely lost a large amount of her edge in that regards. Still a great killing option. Next is Julia with a K, and she is not a multiple killer card. She's missing quite a few awakenings. Yes, she can get 777 combo, but her weighted stats are low. It would require a tremendous amount of investment to really bring her up to usable stats, and even then it's low. You don't have VDP, you have a bit of damage. It's just not something we want. There's no real reason to use Julia with a K over other options. She does not provide that much value overall. Yes, the extra 7 combo means she's 777, but it's 777 on a very weak card with not much else. Not gonna really happen. Next is Shazel, who has unfortunately plagued my box too much. I rolled way too many Shazels the first time this event came around, but they are still a wonderful triple devil killer card solution. Again, how much value that brings to your team depends on what other devil killing cards you have. If you have Mito, may not be as unique and special, but Shazel does come with 2 skill boosts and a reasonably short active skill. She does have an L for those sweet, sweet style points in ranking dungeons. Again, I use Shazel on a modestly regular basis for ranking dungeons. So again, a useful card to have. Next is Pralinae, who is a special killer card because they have 2 god, 2 devil, and their super awakenings give you an extra god or an extra devil. So she can have stupendously high amounts of damage against those respective spawns, and then outrageous damage if it's a god devil. Truly amazing. Again, a great killing damage solution card. But one thing I do want to point out is that she's light wood. And if for those ranking dungeons you are utilizing Zeus Verse, it's not as good because there'll be more pings. You don't have as many other colors to possibly match and kill things. Let's say you're using Pralinae for god killing, but you have also a number 6 in your box. Number 6 could use fire or water to possibly kill the floor. Pralinae would need to use light or wood, but Zeus Verse will be pinging as well. The idea is we want to reduce pings for animation time. It's a small nitpick, but it's something that I found, at least for myself, that has prevented me from using her as much as the other killing options from this machine, because most of my ranking dungeon teams are Zeus Verse based for those things that utilize those killers. And then last and not least, because they're actually reasonable, is Vigo. Because Vigo has, well, 100% defense break, which may or may not be useful, but they change hearts and hazards to water. But their awakenings are triple healer killer with healer killer latents. You could go double physical with physical killer latents, but why not be one of the best healer killer solutions possible? You might as well be the best at what you're possibly able to do, because that's how you actually are utilized on teams for various dungeons. So Vigo provides lots of healer killers. How useful that will be depends on the stuff you play, but again, it's nice to have one in your box. We might have an event like a ranking dungeon or like something that you want to play regularly that has a healer that doesn't have a void. Vigo can definitely punch their way through it with comically high amounts of damage. So I feel like I've probably given a bit of foreshadowing as to whether or not I plan to roll, and the answer is no. I have rolled this event many times in the past. I have way too many of these cards, I feel, maybe. At the same time, I have so many of the bottom rarity cards, and each of them. So there's no motivation for me to roll. I'm missing the new 6-star cards, and I'm missing most of the 7-star cards, but it's not worth throwing 10 magic stones for like my 13th Shazel. It's not worthwhile. But it's still fun to dream about what I could possibly roll. So for 7 stars, Valeria. I don't have one. She's the best at what she does. Of course I would want her. There's not much else to say. For Omega, I don't have Omega, so that's kind of like a pseudo default win, but at the same time, I feel like they're the most valuable 6-star card as well, because it's a great burst style active skill. It can give gargantuan stats in co-op. Useful card to have. And then for 5 stars, Vigo is my default winner because I just have the least number of copies of him. I think I have maybe 1, maybe 2. I have so many Shazels, I don't want to see them ever again. So really the 5 stars, it's kind of like you want what you don't have, so to speak. And in my case, I want what I have the least of. So in conclusion, the Dragonbound Dragoncaller event was once an exciting time to spend your magic stones, but over time, the cards have become relatively weaker, and not much has really changed since the last time. At least nothing truly meaningful that makes it so you want to roll more. And in addition to that, this event will return on a regular basis, so there is no rush to roll here. It will come back later on this year at some point, and hopefully at that point, everything will be buffed significantly higher. Maybe they'll get weapon assist. Who knows? The point of the matter is it's going to come back, and it's the best time to roll this event is when it comes back and the cards are at like kind of their peak, so to speak, relative to other options available. Regardless of all that, let me know what you think about this event in the comments below. Do you plan on rolling? And if you are someone who is newer to pad or has never rolled this event whatsoever, would you actually spend magic stones here or just keep holding out for the next big thing? Hopefully you have a fantastic day. I wish you all the best luck in your own pad adventures, and happy puzzling.